this is not how I remember Santa Claus being, but I instantly enjoyed it. The movie opens on a Christmas Eve in Bristol, England. Santa is drinking himself to stupor at a bar when he comes across another Santa, and they start to exchange war stories. You know, how being Santa sucks because of our planet's well-documented greed, and how children are little pieces of the S-word who only appreciate their Christmas gifts for 2 seconds before start craving the next flashy thing. Santa's words, not mine. By the way, this is like Santa complaining, not a random man wearing a fat suit and a costume, and you can tell because after he finishes his drinks, he rides into the clouds with his reindeer, and from his vantage point, throws up all over the bar owner. Not out of spite, though, just that when a man's gotta puke, he's gotta puke. From there, the movie takes us to Greenwich, Connecticut, where a man, Jason, is meeting his what looks to be estranged wife, Linda, and their beautiful daughter, Trudy. Together, the family is taking a trip to spend Christmas with Grandma because, of course, no better time to go spend time with Meemaw than on Christmas. Guaranteed end-of-year fattening just in time for the stress of the coming year to milk every form of fattening you had received. By the way, Ol' Nana's home is freaking huge. This woman is wee healthy. The whole Christmas shebang is an entire production with a catering crew that would rival what they have in the White House. In Grandma's house, we meet Jason's sister, Alva, who is immediately obnoxious. Alva has a teenage son, Bert, whose life as a perv is already off to a great start with one sexual harassment case to his credit even before graduating high school. Alva also has a boyfriend, Morgan Steele, a wannabe action star. So, loser. When Grandma Gertrude appears, she's the exact opposite of every stereotype you ever knew about grandmas. The woman is an absolute B-word. I mean, she's obviously a boss lady, which you've got to respect, but she could also use some training in being a more caring parent. Meanwhile, Santa is doing his trips, and he couldn't be any less excited about them. He drinks on the job, flings the presents any which way, and pisses all over town. My deep condolences to those who may have thought that was rain. Back at Grandma Gertrude's house, Trudy is kinda upset that her dad didn't take her to see Santa at the mall, which means Santa doesn't know what she wants for Christmas this year. To make up for his blunder, Jason hands her a walkie-talkie, which, according to him, is magic. Jason says it's a direct hotline to Santa himself. And, of course, to cover all bases, Jason tells Trudy that Santa might not be able to respond to her because he's busy delivering presents and all. However, he says, Santa would hear every message she sent through the magic walkie-talkie. Quick thinking. When the parents leave the room and eavesdrop at the door, Trudy makes her request to Santa, and of course you can guess what it is. She wants her daddy and mummy to make up so that they can be a family again. Meanwhile, unknown to the Lightstone family, Lightstone is the family name by the way, so unknown to the Lightstone family, the catering outfit they hired for their Christmas Eve dinner is not at all a catering outfit. They are actually mercenaries with Christmas-themed code names to make them adorable, but don't be playing because these guys will shoot to kill. Mr. Scrooge, the leader of the gang, already clapped the guard at the gate. Also, he's the only one with the not adorable code name. The rest are actually really sweet, like Sugar Plum, Candy Cane, Jingle, Peppermint. While the mercenaries make their way around the house preparing to slaughter the Lightstones, Jason and Linda try to work through their issues, which primarily centers around how Grandma Gertrude keeps forcing herself between them. Jason tells Linda that he's ready to walk away from his mother and her company to give his family the life they deserve. But before Linda can consider Jason's proposal, they hear footsteps. The mercenaries are here. Meanwhile, in the middle of all of this, Santa already made his way into the house, but he stumbled on some pre-war booze and a massage chair. So, he took a drink and fell asleep in the massage chair before he was woken up by the noise. When he hears the order from Mr. Scrooge to gather all the Lightstones and execute anyone else they find, Santa tries to escape, but somehow his magic isn't working, probably owing to how much booze he's consumed up to this point. While he stands around swearing like a sailor at sea, one of the henchmen finds him, and that's when we find out that St. Nicholas is actually a badass. Sweet and lovable Santa beats the living crap out of the dude. Even throws him out through the window for good measure where the henchman is impaled by a pointy thingy on the ground. At this point, Rudolph and his friends have counted the costs and figured that this new arrangement wouldn't be convenient to their continued existence. So, they jet out and abandon Santa. Santa is about to find his way out of the Lightstone's home and save his butt. But then he sees Trudy through the living room window and realizes he can't abandon her like that, especially since he has her gingerbread cookie, which is an exact replica of him, that is, not even remotely resembling him in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, back in the Lightstone's living room, of course, it takes the villainous Mr. Scrooge to point out to us that the true villains of this story are the Lightstone family. I mean, the Christmas mercenary guys are bad, but the Lightstones are worse. The family's wealth is built on corruption and embezzlement, while their employees are hardly paid well. In fact, Gertrude has $300 million in cash sitting in her vault. The money was given to her company to settle some peeps in the Middle East so that they could keep supplying the US oil. But she found a way to embezzle the already corrupt funds, and now the revelers were here to take it off her hands. While some of the gang try to break into the vault, Santa moves around the basement where he eventually joined by one of the henchmen. The two pull a few punches until Santa punctures the guy's eye with a Star of Bethlehem and then turns on the switch. The henchman walks into the light looking like a hybrid of Christmas and a 4th of July picnic. As Frosty continues to roast, Santa browses through his stuff for his communication device so he can call 911. He finds Frosty's walkie-talkie and tries to change the channel, and that's when he picks up on Trudy, who had been trying to reach him from her walkie-talkie in the living room. It seems like the two are going to team up and save Christmas. After Trudy's call, Santa gets in touch with Mr. Scrooge after the gang tries to reach Frosty on his walkie-talkie. He tells them that he's the one that clapped Frosty, and Mr. Scrooge charges into the living room, threatening to slice off Jason Ahem with a nutcracker if Gertrude didn't tell him who they hired to play Santa Cum Hitman. Faced with the very real threat of never having a baby brother or sister, or maybe even a father, Trudy mans up, something none of the adults so far have even thought of doing. She warns the gang that Santa was going to find them and beat them up. Trudy's parents are convinced Trudy is just playing make-believe, but Trudy and Mr. Scrooge both know she isn't. So, Mr. Scrooge tries to get Trudy to lure Santa down to the living room so they could take care of him, but the parents keep on appealing to Trudy to tell Mr. Scrooge that she's only playing until Jason gets overwhelmed and screams that Santa isn't real. Of course, as you know, this is a cardinal offense, and it upsets Trudy, so she manages to break free from several grown hitmen and runs away from the living room to the attic. While all of that is going on, Santa is treating himself in some other room. In the course of fighting, he'd gotten himself cut and was now bleeding out real bad. But after managing to sew himself up, he passes out until he is awoken by a radio from Trudy. Trudy tells Santa everything her dad said about Santa not being real and how parents only claimed Santa was real to make kids feel better. She asks him if he's real too, which Santa replies yes, and begins to tell her about some of the Christmas wishes she'd had in the past, and that restores her faith in Santa. Trudy then asks Santa if he can make her parents love each other again, to which Santa says he's not sure he can make that happen because grown-up relationships are complicated. Back in the living room, the gang forces the Lightstone to open the presents they got one another. Of course, Alva's and her boyfriends to Gertrude are absolute trash. Jason's gift, on the other hand, turns out to be his mom's favorite whiskey and a note that shakes Gertrude. Wonder what Jason wrote. After his conversation with Trudy, Santa makes his way out of the room he's been in. Unfortunately, he's waylaid by the gang who tie him up and burn his magic sack. Mr. Scrooge then tells the story of why he hates Christmas so much. When he was younger, his father lost his job and they couldn't get anything to celebrate Christmas. Their neighbors, on the other hand, were able to set up nicely for the holiday. So Scrooge decided to break into their house and steal their stuff. Unfortunately for him, their grandfather got up at precisely that time to pee. So when he saw Scrooge, he was startled, which made him fall down and break his neck. Ultimately, the whole thing proved too much for Gramps, so he went kaput. Scrooge immediately became the scapegoat, and no matter how hard he tried to explain that he didn't push poor Gramps, no one would believe him. And so, ever since then, he's been all, Christmas ruined my life, and I'm never gonna love again, and blah blah blah. Tired of the games, Scrooge decides to pump a few bullets into Santa's brain, but just as he's about to do that, it begins to snow. Styrofoam. It begins to snow styrofoam because on top of the room where Santa is being tied up is the attic, and Trudy had been in there putting everything she learned from Home Alone about setting up booby traps into practice. The styrofoam snow distracts the gang long enough to let Santa disappear up the chimney. When Santa climbs up the roof, he sees Gertrude's private security team, the one she won't keep shut about, riding down. From their conversation with Alva's boyfriend, who broke through the window and escaped, Gertrude's private security strike team are actually in cahoots with Mr. Scrooge and his henchmen. And yeah, of course they clapped Jean-Claude Van Dipshit, as Gertrude named him, after they had gotten what they wanted from him and therefore found him useless. Meanwhile, Sugarplum finally manages to hack into and open the vault. Unfortunately for the gang, there's no money in it. So, while the gang is busy reeling from their disappointment, Santa finds a hammer in this shed and beats the living crap out of the dudes assigned to take him out. By the way, he can wield a hammer because, in his past life, before he became Santa, he used to be a warrior, and his weapon of choice was a hammer. Back in the living room, Mr. Scrooge and Commander Thorpe, who's the leader of Gertrude's private security team, are losing their crap because they can't find the money. So they threaten the family to fess up and tell them where the money is, else they're all going to get clapped. When Mr. Scrooge picks up Linda and points the gun to her head, Jason finally blurts out the truth. He took the $300 million. He stole it so that he could run away from his mother and start a new life with his wife and daughter. And that was what he wrote in the note that made Gertrude sad. As Jason takes the gang to where the money is, Candy Cane, and Gingerbread finally stumble on Trudy's hiding place. But as they try to make their way through Trudy's Home Alone booby traps, Gingerbread gets clapped from the traps while Santa offs Candy Cane before coming to rescue Trudy. Eventually, Jason takes the gang to where he hid the money in a nativity scene outside the house. On their way to the nativity scene, Trudy tells Jason that she's forgiven him. According to her, Lightstones have always been mean, selfish little pieces of crap. Plus, they know how to take what they want, which he did. So, it's all well and good. When Scrooge finally gets his hands on the money, he orders his minions to off the remaining hostages in the living room. But somehow, Linda, Alva, and Bert manage to distract and clap their captor. Finally, Trudy reunites with her mum and brings Santa along with her. Santa arms Linda with a gun and gets her to shoot at the gang while he goes around the other way and takes out the rest with his hammer. After Linda offs the last mercenary, she and Jason reunite with a kiss, and Trudy sees them. Meanwhile, Santa and Scrooge are left to perform the final showdown. But before the fight ensues, Scrooge stumbles on Santa's magic naughty list, which leads him to finally admit that Santa is real. Scrooge's epiphany does not cause him to be nicer, though. He just blames the suckfest that his life is on Santa and promises to destroy Santa that night so that the Christmas holiday can finally end. Santa and Scrooge engage in ruthless battle, hitting each other with powerful weapons. There's spaghetti sauce flowing everywhere like no man business, and Scrooge is really letting Santa have it. That is, until Santa magically drags Scrooge through a nearby chimney and up the roof, dismembering him in the process. Standing on top of the chimney and feeling on top of the world, Santa has a hearty laugh until Commander Thorpe delivers multiple fatal shots to his chest. Ain't no way Santa is making it out of this shootout alive. Now Thorpe is standing over Santa's head, ready to deliver the one final shot to Santa's head. But before Thorpe can do that, Gertrude shows up with a gun and claps Thorpe instead with a clean shot right through his skull. Right then, the rest of the family appear on the scene. By now, Santa is breathing his last and mentions that he's feeling cold. With nothing else to burn and all the fires going down, Jason stumbles on the idea to use the money as fuel, which sends Alva into a panic attack. Jason continues to burn the $300 million with Linda's help, but Santa passes all the same. However, when everyone finally admits their belief in Santa, yes, including Gertrude, Santa magically comes back to life. His reindeer, having confirmed that Santa wouldn't be the death of them, finally reappear with a spare magic sack for Santa. Trudy and Santa then share an emotional goodbye as Santa returns to his job of delivering presents to the good boys and girls on his good list. Moral of the story, what the flipping heck?